Good evening, everybody out there in YouTube land. How are you all doing? Listen, everybody, I know that you're a loyal fan of the best guy ever, but today I have a very different kind of content for here on the channel. I don't necessarily plan on making a habit of it, but I thought this was interesting enough to bring to your attention. I'm sure that most of you are here for that post-ironic weeb shit that I slang oh so gracefully, but remember everybody how I always talk about how I'm more than just an anime YouTuber, I am a philosopher god king. That's my official title, and today I'm here to prove it, because I am bringing to you today a conversation on philosophy with the one, the only, Mr. Rucka Rucka Ali. You might know him, you might have heard of him. He is a famous old school YouTuber musician who's been making the most politically incorrect music probably anywhere on the site. I've been a fan of his work for a long time, and in recent months, weeks, whenever, he started to be more outspoken about a political slash philosophical subject that he is deeply invested in, one called Objectivism. You know, that old thing that lady Ayn Rand started back in the day. It's something that I too am very interested in, and so one thing led to another through Twitter after I watched his appearance on the Rubin Report, and we ended up having a conversation here discussing our opinions on the subject. He's kind of a hardline objectivist, and I had a couple of reservations. I'm a little more of a waffler when it comes to this thing, so why don't you just strap in, listen up, and load your brains with some hardcore fucking information about objectivism and two cool lads talking about it. So without further ado, please enjoy Best Guy Ever and Rucka Rucka Ali on Objectivism. Hello everybody out there, how's it going in this holiday season? Well, guess what, motherfucker? It's time for an extra special gift. You got me, of course, the best guy ever, and I'm here with a very special guest who you may have heard of through the internets, Rucka Rucka Ali. Welcome.
Yeah. What up, man?
Not much, man. Happy to have you. It's kind of a weird stroke of fate. We just happened to meet on Twitter today talking about objectivism. I was saying how I agreed with some shit you'd been saying recently, and here we are. Here we are having a conversation.
Here we are.
Pretty excited about it.
Yeah.
So let's get right into it. So you were on Dave Rubin recently, and that's kind of what I what made me want to tweet about it and just say how much I liked the kind of unique perspective that you, being a avowed objectivist, are, you got a unique perspective that not a lot of other people, I don't know, either have the fucking courage or have the intellectual consistency or honesty to follow through with. Because I know for you, you would definitely say that you, as I think anyone should, who's being intellectually honest, would say they have the most accurate beliefs, which is why they believe them. And if not, they're a fucking coward. What do you think about all that, being an objectivist and all?
I'll take it. I mean, look, obviously anyone who has a strong opinion is going to say that their opinion is the most consistent and honest. But I would say objectivism has the truth on its side, and the primary weapon against objectivism has always been silence, has always been cynicism, has always been saying, that's just stupid. Everybody agrees that's stupid. Yeah. I mean, everybody knows that Ayn Rand is just childish. How can everyone be wrong? That's pretty much been. I haven't seen a whole lot of philosophical.
Like
philosophical
rebuttals, stuff like that.
Yeah, and I'm sure, and lots of smart people disagree with Rand. Lots of people much more intellectual than myself have, breaking down why they disagree with her. I haven't seen a lot of it, and I'd like to see more of it. That's all I've ever really said. Honestly, if the world was ready to debate Rand a long time ago, I'd probably just be off doing my own thing still. Like, I don't need to be the voice of objectivism or the voice of anything philosophical. I enjoy doing my own thing. But when it gets to the point where like there's almost no voice for objectivism in the mainstream or even in the counterculture, it's nowhere, and I'm talking to the wall every day about what it is that I want to say. It's like, why not just say it? And as soon as I start to see people engage with, objectivists and start to talk to them when I see new atheists and skeptics debate the existence of free will with objectivists, when I see religious conservatives debate the ethics of altruism with objectivists, I'll probably be good to go. I don't, I don't consider myself the most academic or intellectual person out there. I mean, what I'm known for has nothing to do with any of this directly. So yeah, that's kind of my thing. So, but honestly, it's like I'm just tired. I grew impatient. I'm just tired of sitting around hoping that maybe someday, somebody will bring this stuff up. It's like, fuck it. I'm just gonna say it.
Yeah, I was going to ask if there was like a motivating thing, because this does sort of seem like, I'm sure you've held these beliefs for a long time, but it really seems like recently you've sort of taken up the mantle, you've taken up the cause here, which I am fully on board with, because I believe a lot of this stuff. I don't know if I would go out of my way to call myself specifically an objectivist, but I am very sympathetic to almost everything. I mean, I read Atlas Shrugged, I've read The Fountainhead. They definitely changed my life in some big ways. I don't know, for me it was probably like 4 or 5 years ago or something. And the older I get, and the more, I don't know, I don't want to suck my own dick too hard, I'm still working on it, but the more successful I become, and the more independently, again, wealthy, but which is not wealthy at all, but the more like capital I have to manage for my own, and the more responsibility I have, the more I run my own shit, the more true I find these principles to be, which I suppose probably ties into the fact that, it only makes sense that people who are, poor would think that whatever system can allocate the most resources to them is, of course, the most morally good system, because that's going to help them out. And they're poor, and they are, deserving of being given things to equate them with those evil bankers and those evil, corporations that to them they see as tyrants monopolizing all. There's so much money. How is it fair that those people have 99% of it and I only have 1%, or, my fraction of the 1%? Meanwhile, completely oblivious to the fact that they are no longer living in a mud hut in the savannah, of course, because of the things that industry has brought us. They probably have a fucking car. Thanks, Henry Ford, for that. How much fucking historical, love does Henry Ford get anymore? How much love do we give guys like Bill Gates, who changed the world by making the personal computer? These things are so obviously fundamentally improvements to our society, and because of the way we structure our society as capitalist, it's like if Steve Jobs or Microsoft man, Bill Gates, if they were like lords, who had come up with these things and handed them out, they would be considered like gods or like the greatest people who ever lived. But because they are just individuals who achieved these ends, like I find the attitude being like, well, fuck that guy. He's not special. Why does he get all the money? But of course, it is in the competence. And it's exactly that fucking, John Galt, man. They're the John Galts of the world. They're the ones making things better for everybody. So of course they deserve the accolades, the success. And, so, the whole deal there. I couldn't be more unsympathetic to people who are just whining because they feel that they are lacking things that other people have, acquired to them through some sort of black magic, but in the reality is just through the virtues of capitalism and their own success.
Yeah, well, let me pick that apart a little bit because you remind me a lot of me after I read Atlas. And that was a long time ago. So I'm still hearing a little bit of a utilitarian justification for Bill Gates.
Definitely true.
So that's what it is we need to get rid of. Because when Bill Gates does get credit, morally, that is, it's for his utilitarian contribution. Like, oh, he made our life better, therefore he's morally good, and we owe him thanks. Well, he pursued his own values. He pursued his own wealth, but also his own vision. He brought his vision to life. Obviously, a selfish thing, even if he was hoping to improve people's lives.
You know what? If you're gonna just tell me that, if you're trying to educate me on the fact that selfishness is a virtue, I just want to let you know I'm totally with you on that.
Oh, I know you.
Tell me that. Okay.
No, I know you are, but I want to kind of pick apart what you just said. Where yes, we should be thanking them. Yes, we should. However, we should also be celebrating the fact that Steve Jobs and Bill Gates pursued their own interest, that their moral credit, morality being what it is that you should do to preserve and enhance your life. They did that in a magnificent way, and yes, we all benefited from it. Now, they get no moral credit at all because it benefited themselves, and when they do get some moral credit, it's on utilitarian grounds. Because we just still can't bring ourselves to calling selfishness itself a virtue. We should be thanking them just for basically. I mean, I'm going to sound like a total dumbass for saying, but like for breathing the same air as us while doing what it is they wanted to do. Yeah, we benefit from the fact that these geniuses are living in the same time as us, and we should be sort of thanking them. Not really thanking them because it is a trade.
Right.
But yeah, no, listen, I mean, absolutely, I agree with everything you said. I just want to emphasize the utilitarian element of it is only I kind of got that also because that's the utilitarian kind of sounding argument is made often in Atlas Shrugged, and that's sort of the theme. But I mean, Rand was going deeper than utilitarianism. I mean, utilitarianism is another false form of ethics. The other people are not the standard when it comes to your actions. You are the standard for moral for action, for moral action. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I hope I'm making myself clear.
I got you, and that's interesting. Mm-hmm. So here, like, I was afraid we'd have too much in common, but here we actually do have a little bit of a branching point between us, because all my viewers will know I've got this thing called sort of my movement is called weird utilitarianism, is what it's been coined by the people who've seen the arguments I've made. I've got this like fetishistic fascination with Star Trek. And not in the utopian, like the pseudo-communist aspect of it. It's just in the way that society has progressed to be, in all the things that I would want life to be, like post-racial, like completely post-racial. I don't know, people are able to pursue in Star Trek the exactly the things that you're talking about, self-fulfillment. Like I'm not sure it's necessarily great that there's no currency in Starfleet, like in the in the Federation or whatever it's called, because like what reason do people have to motivate themselves? Like the human beings in Star Trek are actually kind of different from human beings in real life, because these people are motivated solely by like, I don't even know what they're motivated by. Like it is this utopian thing, kind of like Marxism, about they want to like better the world for everybody else. And I'm not really on board with that. But the aspect I do like is what you were talking about. It's a self-fulfillment thing. Like there's one episode, for example, where a guy is like a famous scientist. He's like the greatest, like geoengineer or terraformer who's ever lived. He's considered like a great artist. And, in the end of the episode, he decides that like, due to shenanigans, he needs to sacrifice his own life in order to make like his final terraforming vision, take place. And so he does this, and everyone thinks to themselves, oh, what a loss, it's so sad that, this guy died doing what he loves. And I couldn't be happier for the guy to die in pursuit of his dream and achieving his dream. That seems to me like exactly the right way to die, if there was ever such a way. And of course, in the episode, he dies completely fulfilled and with full, knowledge that he's lived a life, and it's exactly what he wants. So in that way, I'm totally on board with the idea of self-fulfillment being its own end, being an end of itself, and I totally agree. But I have one additional thing where the like weird utilitarianism comes in, and that is that I sort of consider every human being born with at least a little bit of debit to the society that supports them, just by the fact that it exists inherently. And I'm not really making an argument for taxation or anything here, but I think in a societal way, it's only fair that the person be instilled with the feeling that they should give back in some way to the people that have allowed them to live their life. And so this wouldn't be like a law thing, but I would very much like it if people absorb this kind of thought, internally at some point, culturally. And I'm exaggerating here, but I sort of consider people like soldiers enlisted in the campaign of expanding human knowledge and human civilization and achieving the most happiness possible for everyone. And of course, I've got my standards for what that means, which I think are accurate. But like, I definitely incorporate that into my thought process for like how people should live their lives. So there's absolutely like a utilitarian aspect to it. So I think we would probably disagree a little bit in terms of, I don't necessarily think only pursuing just the things that make you happy is necessarily the best way to maximize good. I also think there should be at least some element of giving back to your community in whatever way that means, or at least keeping that in mind as you pursue your goal, which should obviously be your primary focus in life. What do you think
So
about that?
so much to get into.
Yeah,
Okay,
okay.
let me write it down, or let me enter down everything. Okay, so I don't want to miss any of that. Okay,
Sure.
so first we've got Star Trek.
Yeah.
Okay, an artist dying, doing what he loves or for what he loves.
I'm giving you too much. I apologize.
No. It's so this is great stuff.
Okay.
Was it then that you said there should be some debt at birth?
Yep, that's right. That's right. To the society. To the society.
spreading knowledge, and then what was that? That last part was,
Enlisted as a soldier in the campaign of spreading human advancement and information
Okay.
acquisition, things of that nature. Yeah.
and then there was one last one. The very last thing you said, I don't remember.
I don't remember. Okay, maybe I'll remember it as we. Just
Okay, maybe I mean, maybe we'll get there. But okay, so Star Trek, just like there's no money.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Star Trek, I believe, was created by a hippie who wanted to see. I don't know how that
Absolutely
makes
true.
sense. People act like money is this god that drives us. Like, listen, money just means if you want me to give you a sandwich now, and you don't want to, and what I need right now is let's say gasoline in my car.
Yep.
You don't have to then go drill oil out of the ground and give me the gasoline. You can just give me you can just give me some tender so I can give you the sandwich, and then I can go get gasoline. That's what money is.
It's the mechanism that allows specialization, which allows increased productivity.
Absolutely.
Of course. Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah. So if Star Trek were saying they want a utopia where everyone just kind of works for free, but everyone gets what they need, it's like,
hey man, I'm not on board with that. I am not.
I don't know.
I mean, kind of human being to do that kind of shit.
I mean, it's a worse kind of human being. A good human being
I agree.
Wants to create stuff and have the best possible life he can. So, I mean, yeah, I love Star Trek, but I mean, there's definitely some inconsistency there if they're implying that the future people will do away with money, essentially doing away with personal pursuits as such, as though the noble thing to do is to explore space, for mankind and not for personal reasons. I mean, there's just, I mean,
I think we all want, like, it'd be great if we had like an interstellar civilization and we could see the wonders of the world. But like the guys like Gene Roddenberry who created Star Trek, they seem to have this idea that the way we get there is by everyone like just banding together to work. Like, yeah, we'll all be a team and we'll do it together. Like, whatever, man. Of course, that's completely unrealistic and is not how it's actually going to happen, if it actually does happen, which I sure hope it does.
Well, I mean, the only way we'll ever get to, Pluto, let alone outside of the solar system, is if we have a revolution in our philosophical beliefs. And I believe the revolution to be had is in ethics. Personal pursuit of personal gain is what will get us the technology as well as the incentive to travel through space. And of course, Star Trek, it's just basically everything's just the government. Everything's just, the collective, even though the Borg is sort of the ugly manifestation of that.
Right,
but then the Enterprise itself is supposed to be this benevolent version of, I guess, communism. I don't know. They never really go into much detail, do they? But what I hate about Star Trek in this regard is that they, and a lot of sci-fi writers, people like George Orwell, do this, where they act like technology will just continue to develop when people have done away with capitalism, when they've done away with, egoism on any level. And yeah, for a little while it will. The communists and the Nazis came up with some new technologies using the Enlightenment values, using the scientific discoveries of previous eras. But how long can that last for? Ultimately, they're returning to barbarism, and those systems will eat themselves. So, Star Trek is unrealistic in that respect.
To be fair, I think Star Trek like sort of takes place in a world after all these hard questions have been answered and solved, and they're kind of, I mean, in a way, they're past it, so it doesn't even matter. They can just make infinite resources at this point. But they're coasting sort of on the developments of like a capitalistic system, I think, that produced the marvels that allows their society to be sustained. And
you're like Sargon. He thinks once robots are invented, we can be communists.
I'm not arguing for that at all. I just think that I mean, theoretically, if you totally change the way supply and demand functions by eliminating want, which is basically what happened in Star Trek, because everyone has access to infinite food and material and basically whatever they want. I mean, that changes the rules of the game at that point. And
this is why. Well, this is why you're still living in the realm of politics and concretes. If you do away with people's psychological economy, if you violate their economic prosperity by doing away with their wants, their so-called wants, as opposed to their so-called needs. Those people will they have no desire to live. They have no desire to travel through space, and that whatever technology they do have will likely be used for destruction. It'll probably, like, people are not, human nature is to create, to produce values, to trade, to pursue things selfishly. That's how we survive, and human nature is not going to change. Look, by caveman standards, you and I have no more wants. I mean, we're spending our time arguing philosophy over the internet and playing video games and figuring out what to do with our spare time. Our standard of living is already astronomical compared to the past, and it's still not enough. We need to individually pursue spiritual enrichment. So there will never be a time where people do away with selfishness. They do away with personal pursuits, the personal voyage before you get to the space one. There's no way, if we do away with the personal enterprise and voyage, there will be no Enterprise voyaging through space.
Well, see, dude, you will not find a guy who agrees with you more on that point than I do. I am 100% on board. I mean, if you don't have challenges or whatever, you end up with a situation like WALL-E. The movie WALL-E is a great example, where those people have nothing to live for. They become fat, disgusting sacks of shit, and their lives are an embarrassment. And they deserve to be wiped out because they're not doing anything, and their lives are frankly embarrassing. And it's only at the end, when they're actually given a challenge, something to rise to, that they are given purpose again. And I mean, hell, if technology gets far enough along, I think it will be necessary. Like, let's say we're all like living in our own little matrices where infinite pleasure is at our fingertips if we want it. I think that is a terrible idea. I mean, even outside the fact that we wouldn't be living in the real world. Just if we have all our needs met, there is no doubt in my mind that human beings will crumble with having too much, too much of the stuff they want. There has to be struggle in life, and I think pretty much everybody, every mature person at least, would say that their challenges that they overcame as they were progressing through their life are the things that allow them to form into the person that they become, and are a major factor in making them like a successful, capable person. I mean, I would certainly say that. I think anyone who denies that denies the fundamental realities of what it means to be human. And just like I just came from working out. There is no need for me to exercise at all. I do it because I understand the tangible benefits that it gives me, and I know that my body is a physical thing that needs resistance in order to, form it into the shape that I want, and to, continue to be a real physical object that's operating at as high capacity as possible. And, ethically, morally, I think it's the exact same thing. We've got to have resistances to challenge ourselves and overcome. So, again, I don't know. I think we agree on this point.
I don't think we do.
No? Okay.
Even, I mean, definitely, I love the working out analogy, and I say that yes, challenges can be character development exercises, but no, it's not that we need to have something negative that we're going against. Look, I mean, and by the way, I haven't seen WALL-E, but it sounds like you're saying they've reached sort of a utopia and they're all just getting fat and gross. And
exactly right. Yeah.
But there can be no utopia. If people shut off their minds, it all falls apart. At least some people need to be thinking. Some people need to be rational and pursuing even yet greater stuff. Need to be developing even greater technologies. We need to do that on a personal level to thrive. And in a society, at least some people need to be thinking rationally and actively producing stuff in order for it all to hold together.
Mm-hmm. I'm with you. And just for your information, in WALL-E, the whole conceit of the movie is that the Earth got totally fucked up. It's unlivable. So every human was put onto a big spaceship that is run by computers, run by machines. So the humans have just been allowed to, wallow in degeneracy and become fat, and they it's an analog to like social media. Everyone just is on social media. They don't do anything in real life anymore. And they're these fat sacks of shit. And it's an embarrassment. And of course, and then the machines go out, and like the humans have to, buck up and take back responsibility. So, it's not a perfect metaphor, but it's along the same lines.
It's a bad message. Even based on what you just said, it sounds like what they're saying, what you're saying is that first of all, the Earth becoming unlivable, clearly environmentalist propaganda.
Well, sure.
But no, the idea that commercialism, vulgar commercialism just left us with nothing to live for. Again, people in the year 1900 were living in paradise compared to people even 100 years before, let alone 1,000 years before, let alone 100,000 years before. The idea that now that we've got Twitter in our pocket, now technology is corrupting us is just so not the case. It's our ideas that are corrupt. It's our personal degeneration that's making us turn out the way we are, and that traces back to the philosophy department going back a couple hundred years at least. So no, like this idea that because just that we get to a certain point and then life gets too easy, so technology corrupts us, or how easy life is corrupts us, and we need a good challenge. Look, of course we need a challenge, but the challenge doesn't need to come in the form of a problem. The challenge can be, what do I want to do with my life? What am I inspired to do, and how can I achieve it? That's always going to be a challenge. And the way to get to a future where we're able to live out in space and have anything, quote, anything we want, is to embrace science, to embrace reason, to embrace rational egoism. And I'm still getting this sort of utilitarian / life, yin yang sort of Eastern philosophy from you. This kind of like, well, life can't get too good, or what we feel, or life can be good, but it's all kind of decadent because you need some bad too to make the good seem good. It's like, no, good does not exist by relative to bad. A pleasure is not pleasureful just because you have pain to compare it to. Pleasure is pleasure. Joy is joy. Happiness is happiness. And this is an important distinction. I mean, I don't even know if I'm articulating it well, but this is important stuff. And to an outsider, it might sound like we're arguing about nothing, but to me, this is the important part. And and the fact that you are having such a hard. Well, let's go on to. You can respond to that, or we can go on to the next point I have written down here.
I guess I'll just say that I find this an interesting distinction, and I'll just have to ruminate on it some more, because I do find this intriguing, and it's a meaningful distinction, and I hope people recognize that. So. You're saying that. I think the people can listen back and they understand the distinction. Yeah.
Have you read Ayn Rand's nonfiction at all?
Actually, no, not at all. Unfortunately.
Okay, so I found a copy of her book, The New Left, The Anti-Industrial Revolution. It was in the school library at the community college I was attending when I was 21, 22, and. In the intro to the book, she said, this is meant for like college kids, to know how to deal with what they're hearing at school. And it's since been republished, and it's called Return of the Primitive, and it's got a few additional essays. But, oh boy, does that book nail it. And it applies these, the ideas of Atlas Shrugged. It gives them some context in the context of today's intellectual environment, and this was written in the 60s and 70s, but it applies today as well, especially with all this UC Berkeley shit going on. And I know it might be a can of worms to even mention that, but I absolutely recommend that book as sort of a way to continue to understand what Ayn Rand was saying. Because when I read Atlas Shrugged, what I took away is that the geniuses, they carry us all, we owe them thanks. In fact, maybe they should pay lower taxes than us, in fact, rather than we should all be free. But hey, there's an argument there. But I mean, I think Return of the Primitive, which is what the latest version of it is called, or The New Left, if you get the original version, is just an excellent book. I would definitely recommend it to you. It sounds like you're the perfect candidate for that book. And it definitely helped my integration as I was entering early adulthood. So you mentioned the artist in Star Trek who he had to commit suicide, or he died. What exactly?
He did indeed go out in a blaze of glory. There was a situation going on. He was a terraformer. This was his art. This was his craft. And a situation developed where he was going to be unable to do this. Like the star got unstable, some spacey bullshit was happening, and so he chose that nope, this is my final most important art piece. I choose to kill myself in the process of finishing this, and I will whatever. I'm like, that's my choice. I choose to do this to because this is what's important to me, to make this thing happen for maybe other people to enjoy, or maybe just for himself, something like that. But that was the situation.
What I like about that is that it was his personal values. I definitely, right. There is poetry in that he, in fact, he would rather die, than live without this work of art,
hey, I gotta
without
tell you,
creating.
You would definitely like the way that they discussed this guy in the context of the episode, because everyone, contrary to normal, maybe because they call him an artist, it's okay to praise him, but everyone's
Right.
going on and on about how great this guy is and all the good that he's done and how everybody appreciates him, and he's this bombastic, really charismatic guy. I wish I could remember his name.
Yeah.
But he's a charismatic, powerful force that just commands the space that he's in, and he takes no nonsense, and lives his whole life uncompromising, and is actually celebrated for it, contrary to what society moreover tells us that we're supposed to be like, altruism and all that.
Well, but Nate, it's very telling that he had to give his life for this, and that he celebrated. He celebrated because he died for it. And that it's very revealing that that's the situation he was in, and it speaks to the general stupidity of these lifeboat questions. That the fact that anytime you discuss morality, whether it's in ethics classes in school, or whether it's you're talking to Dennis Prager or any of these religious types, the first question they always ask is, you're on a lifeboat and there's you and a stranger, or it's you and a good friend, or you and an acquaintance.
An atheist and a Catholic on the boat with you.
Yeah,
what do you
right.
do? Yeah, right.
Or you're at a cliff and you can save your dog or save your friend, or save a stranger, and it's like, this is not the purpose of ethics. I understand you may face these situations through some freak turn of events, but again, the purpose of ethics is, what should you do? We're on planet Earth. What should I do? What is the right way for me to act? Once I've established that reality is real, that I am able to perceive it, and to form concepts, now what to do with this information? Now, well, the answer is to be rational, to produce, to trade honestly, to have integrity, and things that stem off of those virtues. The idea that morality the first place you need to go is a lifeboat situation where somebody must lose. That is not reality. That is not the rule of reality. That is the exception. But in reality, if you and I are just living in the wilderness and we are coming up with this stuff from scratch, we're trading together, and that's win-win. We are we're delegating defense, so somebody is off fending off the other tribes while you and I are trading amongst each other and building, and it's win-win. These lifeboat situations they're meant to separate ethics from reality. They're meant to separate ethics from your everyday life.
And guys like Prager, they concoct these situations deliberately to demand that they're intentionally structured to justify their religion, which is less and less doable as time goes on, as there's more and more holes poked in it. They've got to concoct these examples that only leave you bad options. And of course, this guy's a pro. He's been doing it for God knows how long, and he's just getting more and more desperate. I mean, not to shit on the guy. I respect him for being so committed to his beliefs and being relatively intellectually honest, as I do a lot of these people. But I mean, God, could I not disagree? And I'm the biggest atheist in the world, more or less. Anti-theist, I'd say I'm probably bordering on. And these arguments do nothing for me whatsoever. Any of this stuff.
But it's not just the religious folks. In fact, it's the secular philosophers even more so. So Dennis Prager, to his credit, presents ethics as something that is desirable to do because it will make your life better with a little bit of guilt, with a little bit of if you don't do this, we'll all be Nazis. There is some of that. Right. But, I mean, to his credit, today religious conservatives are at least making ethics somewhat relevant to a selfish life, whereas the modern philosophy professors, they've put ethics in another dimension where it has nothing to do with your personal happiness and it has no relationship to what it is you need to do to live. So the lifeboat situations, you'll hear that in ethics classes in universities where the professor is in no way religious whatsoever. Mm-hmm. And I'm all for bashing religious folks, but that's not this is precisely the problem. It's that when the Enlightenment sort of did away with religion in a major way, or it put it in the back seat, or as Leonard Peikoff would say, it defanged Christianity, it made it non-threatening, and it put secularism as the driver of our culture. When it came to ethics, the ethics of religion were never truly challenged. The ethics of Christianity, altruism, the moral ideal was still, what's a good person? Oh, someone who gets nailed to a cross for the sake of other people. Right. Yeah, that's what a good person. Oh boy. And now ethics being moral means what you don't want. Someone who's
all the time I'll define to people who don't understand these things. I mean, I don't know, whoever, when I'm out there, of course, exactly what, I forget which book, but what Ayn Rand says of just true selflessness is like giving money to causes you don't believe in. That's real altruism right there. And you should be doing that if you want to be a true Christian, if you really want to be, helping people who do not deserve it, whose cause does not help you in any way. That's the only real altruism. Because I mean, I always tell people that everything you do that you want to do is by virtue of the fact that you want to do it is selfish, and there's no way around that. So people who there's arguments about how good she was as a person, but like your Mother Teresa's, like she loved being down in the shit. She fucking was all about that life, and so she got her own sense of fulfillment. I know Christopher Hitchens often went off on Mother Teresa for like just absolutely loving the garbage that she stewed about in, and kind of encourage it in a twisted sort of way. I can't speak too much to that. I'm not an expert like he was. But, I mean, that's that. I forget the point I was making.
Just that, people who suffer horribly for the supposed benefit of others, not that it usually does benefit anyone, those are still the moral ideal. We look at them and go, oh, what a good person. Why can't I be that good? And what they're really saying is, I'm glad I'm not that good, because good is synonymous with undesirable. Very true. According, Very true. And with the ethics of altruism. And that's, when the artist in Star Trek gives his life, it sounds like a wonderful episode and very inspiring. And like I said, there is something I do like about it where he's driven by his own personal values, and that is very pretty. But it's very telling that he had to die for it. I haven't seen the episode. I just thought that was worth commenting on. All right, now you mentioned that everyone is born with some debt, and not necessarily, but not exactly financial. And when you said that, I actually think what you're proposing is worse than a financial debt. You're essentially saying they ethically, psychologically are indebted to the society around them, and that's more infinitely worse than saying they're born owing some money.
It's the most controversial aspect of my personal life philosophy. Sure. Okay. Okay.
So can you tell me what this debt is, where it comes from, and how it should be paid?
Well, yes. It stems from just the idea that I do think, and we probably disagree here, that left alone, things could indeed sort of spiral into a nihilistic void, because I'm sort of a pragmatic nihilist. Of course, I don't believe there's any objective value for the most part. We could talk about that later if we get to that. Given the opportunity to do so, I think it is likely that there will be abuses of power. And I don't like the idea of capping anyone's ability to do anything through legal means, like with the threat of violence backing it up. But this is a societal sort of conditioning that I want people to have, where they feel a desire. I mean, a desire would be nice. I'd like this to be an instilled value taught from parent to child, where they feel that, we have a civilization here, we're pretty happy about it, and so one of the goals of your life, it would sure be nice, Bobby Sue, if you worked towards making the world a better place. Just as one of the values that you aspire to. And I don't think that needs to in any way corrupt your pursuit of your own individual gains. I just think that it makes sense. Like, if you're a serial killer, I know this is an extreme example. It's just, this is a sort of defense mechanism against sort of aberrance in the system. I think most people indeed want to create and do things in an honest way, but this sort of societal, I don't know, rail on the side of the fucking cliff is there to prevent, or to instill, again, this thought, to consider what your actions are doing to the whole before you commit to a lifestyle or something along those lines. So what do you make of that?
It's interesting that you draw a distinction between pursuing your own selfish interests and making the world a better place, that those are two separate things in your mind.
Only to a certain extent. I am on board with the idea that the best way... Oh, okay. For example, I work a normal job, a 9 to 5, and it's fine. I do okay. But I personally feel such a much deeper sense of personal satisfaction from the work that I do online here. And, I'm working to financially construct myself a situation where I can viably do this full time. That is my current goal in life. And I accept full responsibility that it is my job to make that happen. And I will succeed at doing so in time. But at the same time, I would, if like my chosen field was something that was, I don't know, destructive, like ultimately the content that I make online is guided by the principles that I think are, what I think are useful tools to move humanity forward. Like, I talk about things that I think are good principles. I mean, of course, they're my principles. Of course, I believe they're good. And I reiterate these things, and I interpret things through the lens of this is productive, this is non-productive, and I, of course, steer away from the things that are unproductive and steer towards the things that are productive. And so that's the sort of content that I tell people about, that this is what I want, and I think these are good ideas for you to have as well, folks, because it is sort of a philosophical discussion that I do on my channel and the podcast as well. I talk about things the way that I believe the world should be and the way that I believe people should act. And it's not 100% all about just pursuing what you think is the best thing to do for yourself, even though I understand that is a very, very powerful force in your life and should be your principal guiding tool. But I do think there is some caveats in there.
So this is, I remember when you touched upon this earlier, and I wanted to get to this. So I smelled materialism on you this whole time.
Sure.
With the utilitarian stuff, and now, interestingly enough, you say that we're born indebted to society, but not materially. Only we owe them a little sliver of our soul. And interesting how materialists, what they're really after is your psychological servitude more than the fruit of your labor. Mm-hmm. And that's the role of guilt. It's to make you, it's before they even come for your money. Okay, so if I say the phrase hierarchy of values, what does that mean to you, if anything?
I suppose it brings to mind sort of a triangle with the most important, I don't know, facets of life to keep in mind as you sort of progress through life, and you make the choices based on the most important things that you want to achieve for yourself, and again, in a societal context as well. So, yeah, that sort of thing. So, like, life, I mean, you could take a mathematical approach to it and say the most happiness for the most number of people as kind of like a general rule here, and then do things that you think optimize that for yourself in like a long-term or a short-term way, whatever's the most appropriate.
I don't understand. You're saying the most good for the most amount of people is that your hierarchy of values is everything that you do relates to happiness for the highest number of people?
In a sense, that's correct, yes.
So when you get up and get out of bed in the morning, who is that? How many people is that benefiting?
Well, okay, so I mean that is part of the tapestry of the way that I live my life, and I would argue that the decisions that I make in life are guided by a desire to make the world a better place and to, again, optimize human happiness. And the ways that I think I can do that are to A, manage my life in a structured and like economically viable way so that I'm not a debt to anybody else, that I don't weigh anybody else down. And then, what I am doing productively, I try to extol the virtues that I think are valuable that I would like people to adhere to. So it's sort of the full package deal. Like I maintain myself to live as long as possible, to continue to promote the ideas that I think do the most good. And then I also, and then I actually extol those values in this, like, while keeping my vessel, seaworthy.
Okay. And so that was a bit of a detour. I was surprised by the whole highest value to the biggest amount of people, but I brought up hierarchy of values. Okay, so here's what I was getting at. So for me, staying alive is one value. So sustenance.
Sure.
If I were married, probably my wife would be a very high on that hierarchy. Netflix, sitting back and watching Stranger Things would probably be somewhere on that hierarchy, but very low. So I would never leave, if I had a wife, I wouldn't leave her stranded on the freeway so that I can watch Stranger Things. So you see what I'm saying? There is a hierarchy.
Yes. Okay.
In your spreading positive vibes, spreading your values around the world that's a value to you. That's something that matters to you, even if it's not a material value. So this is why I said I could sense materialism on you, and I can understand why reading Atlas Shrugged, without any sort of guidance and without really chewing on it and maybe even rereading it and maybe being of a certain age when you read it and all that can sort of lead you down the road to materialism, which again, this was sort of big part of what I took from it at the young age that I read it.
Right.
But Atlas Shrugged is actually saying not all values are material. And in fact, Reardon doesn't sell his new metal to the government, even though they're offering to pay him, 10 times what it's actually worth. It's not about material to him. It's about that this was something he envisioned and he worked his ass off to bring it to life, and now it's his. Even if he ends up losing money on it, it matters more to him. Same thing with Howard Roark in The Fountainhead. When him and his team, they work on a project knowing that it's very likely to be destroyed once they're done with it. Right. And one of his workers says, "Why are you doing this?" He goes, "Hey, we'll know that it was there. Whether or not it stays there, we'll know we made it happen." So not all values are material. In fact, the most important values are spiritual. They are, the things you believe. They are the passions that you have. Material values, someone could take away all the money in your account, but they can't really take away from you that which is most important to you. And so you're drawing this dichotomy between the material and the spiritual when you say that, people ought to give back to the world in a way that doesn't entirely benefit themselves. But if it's within their hierarchy of values, if spreading knowledge is within their hierarchy, if knowledge itself is a value to them, and if seeing people flourish is a value to them, it's like when I go on Rubin and I give my opinion. Yeah, there's a certain element of it that just I enjoy speaking. But what if one person actually watches the interview and they end up making certain choices that improve their life tremendously, or say they're an alcoholic and they end up getting sober. That's a life improved tremendously that only cost an hour of my time. And again, I enjoyed it, but also one of the values I got from it is that it could really, really improve somebody's life, or it could give confidence to somebody that maybe sort of implicitly agreed with a lot of these sentiments, but all they see around them are people saying the opposite. So they feel like, oh, there's something wrong with me for feeling this way, for thinking this way. You remember the part of The Fountainhead where a very short-lived character is riding his bike and he sees Howard Roark sitting on the hill, and Roark is looking at the building that he designed, and the kid is blown away by the building. He goes, "Do you know what building that is?" And Roark tells him the name of it. He goes, "Do you know who designed it?" And he says, "I did." And the kid rides off in his bike, and the narrator says Rourke didn't realize he just gave the kid the courage to live the rest of his life. Yeah, like improving the lives of others and spreading positivity. Yeah, it can ultimately come back to you in the form of material values. For instance, if I were to successfully bring objectivism to the culture at large, it would bring material prosperity all around me, which would make my life much more pleasant and easy. But, there's value itself in spreading what I believe. What I think to be true is a value to me, and it's actually pretty high up on the hierarchy. Look, I could be eating right now. I could be eating ice cream right now, which is a material gratuity. I'd rather be sitting here getting a sore throat from shouting about what my opinion is, because this is a higher value to me right now. So yeah, I think your error is drawing a distinction between the material and the spiritual, as though spiritual values don't benefit you. Well, only materials do.
Okay. I'm with you on a lot of that. So it sounds like you're I'm not trying to be nitpicky or no. I'm not trying to say this in a rude way or anything, but it sounds like you're basically trying to enlighten me to the worthiness of spiritual pursuits in addition to material goods. That's you think that I am not valuing these kind of internal satisfaction highly enough, at least in the way that I articulated my points up to this point. Is that relatively accurate?
I would say what makes me say that is that you're saying people should make the world a better place in a way that doesn't benefit themselves. And I'm saying there is no way to make the world a better place without it, in a way that if it's what you believe in, unless you're saying that kids should be taught to, like you said, donate to charities they don't believe in order to, quote, make the world a better place, which obviously wouldn't be making the world a better place. They'd be what I'm saying is if you see that act of charity as an act of altruism, as an act of sacrifice, then yes, I would say you're dismissing the selfishness of spirituality.
Well, here's a point on that, and I think we might have a disagreement here as well. I think the reason that I bring that up is sort of as a safeguard against like actual evil in people, or perhaps not even evil, but gross misunderstandings of the way that you can actually make the world a better place. So it sounds like, if objectivists had their way, of course, it seems like the world would be utterly unfettered by regulations and people would be free to pursue whatever they want, to any degree. But I've always wondered, how do you account for evil people in those situations? I mean, is there a way to check for that? Is there a way to account for people who are maliciously out to, undercut other people and gain at their expense? What's the answer to that in this worldview?
I mean, I would have to look at the exact case you're pointing to, because between rational men there is no dog eat dog, unless you mean like ruthless business practices which drive out competition, or what exactly do you mean?
That's a good example right there. And I know you talked about this with Ruben. I actually wanted to ask you about it, so maybe now's a good time. But the existence of a monopoly system seems like it really could be bad for the free economy that we all want to protect, so that we can keep this whole machine running. So with something like that, it seems like there needs to be something in place. And the only mechanism that comes to mind for me, and maybe you have a better answer than this, would be, again, this kind of societally instilled virtue or desire to, my business practice, it might be making me the most money, but I can tell that it's crushing competition. And even though this, I think that I provide the best product, my competitors, my business practice do stagnate competition, which could force me to improve and other people. And that's really the reason why I bring that up for situations like a monopoly. So what do you think?
I think the perceived threat of such monopolies is part of the problem. I think that's something that's been instilled in the culture around the time that capitalism was raising everyone's standard of living. Okay. And people were taught to be afraid of these big businesses that, as you know, were making everyone's lives much better by being selfish. Look, again, I'm not an economist, and I would need to look at the exact situation, but I don't believe there is a case where a business doing what's best for itself, a businessman doing what's best for himself, hurts anyone in a way that person, is being harmed in a major way. I think people know what they're getting into when they go into business, and if their business fails, they can. I mean, you got to plan for it, and go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but it was
Go ahead.
It's just like one idea that comes to mind, and I'm not actually proposing this. I want to just raise a couple points about this. Is like recently this net neutrality debate has obviously been a big thing in the news, and of course the FCC just repealed the Title II status of net neutrality, and that means that now companies will no longer be legally blocked. I mean, I know it's like there's still appeals and stuff going on, but assuming the quote-unquote worst-case scenario for the people who are, stridently for net neutrality remaining Title II, the worst-case scenario for these people is that someone like Comcast will, up the fees of, whatever internet service, like specifically Netflix or whatever, and they make you pay, let's say, $100 extra a month for Netflix or something, and they say, God damn it, if you don't pay this money, you're getting the slow lanes, we're going to throttle your access, that kind of shit. Now, before you respond to that, the other point I want to bring up here is I don't want to get caught up, because I actually am not totally with these people, because again, I absolutely do not believe that Comcast owes us shit. I do not think they have some sort of legal obligation to provide us this service, and I think morally, I have no problem with them raising rates to demand for Netflix or whatever the fuck they want to charge extra money for. I simply want to point out that it will be something that could happen, and I don't know. I guess people won't like it. What do you think about this situation, the net neutrality thing?
Well, my first reaction is interesting that I earlier mentioned Netflix as an example of something low on the hierarchy of values, and today Netflix is being used as people are willing to now trade the very sanctity of property rights and capitalism to preserve their current price of Netflix. But yeah, I understand it goes much bigger than that. I found it very ironic. I find it ironic that Netflix, that we're all willing to trade the enormous prosperity that the free market gives us in order for some more Netflix and chill at a lower price.
A lot of people just get used to their standard of living, and then they don't want to lose it, and they'll give up whatever it takes to preserve what they've got, right now. So
I understand, and listen, what we have today is not a free market. Big companies cannot buy each other without dealing with antitrust laws. New companies will not enter the market knowing that if they do get very big, they cannot buy out Comcast, so they won't lay down new fiber. I mean, there's just, and in every other, the financial industry is extremely regulated. Yep. All other industries are extremely regulated. So what we have today is a almost partially stagnant mixed economy that is just so almost paralyzed by government intervention. And the clear solution in my mind is to deregulate, to loosen and eliminate the antitrust laws, and to just let people pursue what the values they want to do, and you'll see new companies spring up. You'll see new alternatives. Who knows? No one ever could have imagined the internet, 40, 30 years ago. Who knows if a new alternative to the internet will come along? And people roll their eyes and they go, "Oh yeah, sure." Like, this is the power of cynicism. Even while the world is increasingly turning into a science fiction movie, we still Back to the Future 2 has all but come true at this point. We've got video chat. We've got hoverboards, even if they don't float yet. Yeah. And we've got the internet, which even Back to the Future, they couldn't envision that. And like the fact that we're still so scared about Comcast, taking away our memes by raising the price of stuff. Look, I realize if maybe net neutrality sort of short term keeps things from getting expensive, but I can't in good conscience hold on to a regulation that I know is stifling people's innovation, and it stifles the economy, and it's a violation of rights. I'm always on the side of freedom, liberty. I'm always on the side of free markets, and it's hard for me to convince everyone that laissez-faire capitalism is the answer, but it is. And people they're great at naming problems created by the government and using it to justify more government. But I can't get on board with that. So look, that my net neutrality brings up the question of how do we make the internet better and the world better? And I'm saying, get the government out. Get the government out and get rid of these laws about antitrust and just let companies do what companies do. Let consumers do what consumers do. And let Silicon Valley do what Silicon Valley does. And let the financiers do what financiers do. And yeah, I don't really know where else to go with that.
Well, I think that one of the reasons people have this issue, I personally pretty much completely agree that, just on a moral standard, we do not have the right to stifle what it is ridiculous to me that people think that there is some moral standard to demand Comcast give you fucking Netflix at a reasonable price. Jesus Christ, reevaluate your fucking priorities in life. But even aside from that, it's the fact that with net neutrality specifically, it's the fact that repealing this one thing, repealing this Title II status of Netflix or of net neutrality, it's a small step in the right direction. But unfortunately, because we're caught up in this labyrinthine, maze of regulations, of course, that doesn't actually get us to the objectivist dream, the objectivist goal. It gets us one step in that direction. But unfortunately, in the situation we're in right now, that could theoretically make things worse with fucking Comcast, lobbying. We've got a fucking, ridiculously corrupt lobbying system in this country where they can just buy influence in the fucking Senate and shit. And it's ridiculous. Considering the system that we're in, I don't necessarily know that repealing net neutrality, whatever, Title II, the whole thing, the short version of that, is a way to make things better. I totally agree that just blowing this whole thing wide open is definitely a more promising and healthy seeming solution to these issues across the board. It's just, I wish I could just say that, I'm always happy to take any number of steps toward the direction of things going the right way. But, and what I was saying is that I hate that I'm put in the position where I can't always assume that doing that is going to be the right thing to do, even though I know that is the way that things should be ultimately at the end of the day, because this fucking monolith is in place, and it seems to be going nowhere right now. That's incredibly frustrating.
Well, the first step towards reaching objectivist paradise is for you personally to wholeheartedly agree with the objectivist ethics. And when you're saying that egoism should be tamed by just a drop of altruism, that rational selfishness is not enough, alone is not enough. Now you're basically, politics always reflects the ethics of the people in a free society. They do create a government that reflects that. The government in a democracy, they reflect what it is that we want. And if we want mostly freedom, but with a little bit of social responsibility, that's what we will get. The way that big business is treated differently than small business, good or bad, the fact that the government cuts special deals with them, or the fact that the government persecutes them more than they do mom and pop shops, shows you that we're okay with selfishness and pursuit of values to a point. And yeah, this reservation that you have about objectivism is reflected in your reservation about net neutrality. The fact that it's not open shut. So yeah, like I told Ruben, the real revolution is internal. If you come to understand that it is all or nothing when it comes to ethics, that having a contradiction. When you harbor a contradiction, the evil side of that contradiction wins. Just as in when a good country compromises with a dictatorship, the dictatorship wins. So, that's all I can really say at this point. Yeah, it does suck that we're in this situation we're in, but there is a clear solution. It's to confidently say, your life belongs to you, whether you're a struggling student or whether you're a big business mogul. Your life is yours. Your property is yours. And we're frankly privileged that you're gracing us with your inventions and your innovations, and we are free to not deal with you if we don't like what you're doing. And all we can ask from you is that you not break the law, assuming the laws are just, is that you not commit any crimes preventing anyone from competing with you. But other than that, do what's best for yourself, and I'll do what's best for me. And that's the moral thing to do. To be able to say that with moral certainty is what's important here. And like when I brought up Prager's lawsuit to Dave Rubin, and Prager said Rubin said apprehensively, like the libertarian side of me says, let the market be the market, but the other side of me says, Google is so big that they're kind of like too big to fail or whatever. I if I could go back and say one thing to him, I would have said, watching it back, what I want to say to him is the fact that you are apprehensive about your position, and that Prager is proudly, with moral righteousness, going after Google and pushing towards the violation of property rights, is why the culture is on Prager's side. This is a battle of ethics. This is about a battle of moral certainty and moral principles. We need to embrace the ethics of rational egoism and do it with confidence and show how much fun we're having.
Well, see, no, sorry. Please finish.
And just show that this is what makes me happy. This is the life that I want. And I'm doing this not out of like, oh, this will someday benefit the world. This and only this is what is the moral thing to do. And only a government that is fully consistent with me living the best life that I can is a perfectly just government.
Well, see, perhaps this will sound hypocritical to you, based on your impression of me so far. But like guys like Rubin and Sargon to an extent, one of the issues that I have with their content in general is that those guys, they are. In a sense, like Rubin is what you called it, like a deposed leftist or a displaced leftist, right?
I call it, displaced lefty, yeah.
Right. And so his role right now in the larger landscape of this conversation is pretty much he brings on people to take down the left. He's bringing on people to like break down the left's argument, and there's of course a value to that. And Sargon as well functions in a similar way. And I don't know, some people don't like Sargon. I respect Sargon for his intellectual honesty, even if I don't agree with him on everything, but. One thing, Sargon does this more, but one thing that I don't see either of them do is something that I absolutely want to give a guy who I have massive problems with on a lot of things, but on this point, he's absolutely right, and that's Cenk Uygur from the Young Turks. And it's that he is a fucking lion for his beliefs. He is uncompromising in his love or in his dedication to progressive ideals, and he absolutely weaponizes them in a way that, I mean, he says it all the time. I watch the show occasionally, and I have many problems doing so sometimes. But nonetheless, this is absolutely a virtue that I think he's totally right about. He is out there every time telling people exactly why, not only like the right is wrong, but why he is correct, why things will be better for him. And I mean, I agree with him completely on like his religious stance. He's a total atheist, he's got no time for religion. I'm big on that myself. And he's out there telling people how much better things can be if you just accept this reality and you can move on. You can stop wasting time in church. All these great things that come from that. And I think guys like Dave Rubin, for example, he since it's relevant, since you just spoke with the guy, he is so milquetoast, and he is just. I know his role is to bring people on to say interesting things. I find that dull. I find that uninteresting. I find people like you coming on his show far more engaging, which I assume he's probably fine with. That's the role he's chosen for himself. But like I've said before in my show on the Procrastinators podcast, that something like irony is a purely destructive force. So to be like an ironic memester or whatever, like a shit poster online, that's fine. There is a place for that in the world. But I think a more courageous stance, and just a more useful one overall, is to have your ideology ready to swap right the fuck in there and say, we're not doing that bullshit anymore. Now we're doing this. Free market, baby. You like your fucking smartphone? How'd you like your own personal fucking satellite in a couple hundred years when we've, revolutionized the market? Let's get to it. This is how it happens. When you present people with these ideas, with the fact that this is how I improve your life, motherfucker, shut the fuck up and listen to me. Your ideas are shit. Mine are correct. I believe them whole fucking heartedly. I mean, just to me, that's the guy that I'm going to respect and listen to, not this namby-pamby like, maybe this, maybe that, you know. And again, hopefully that isn't too hypocritical, considering the, you know, the drop of poison in my arguments that you were detailing.
Well, it absolutely is, you know, a drop of poison. Now, first off, kind of a side note, just because we both like Ruben, he's told me privately and he's said publicly he reaches out to everyone.
Okay.
I don't know if you were emphasizing that he only brings people on to kind of take down the left.
I would emphasize that. It
okay.
Seems to be a
so
yeah.
he does invite on Bernie Sanders. He invites on leftists. They don't want to talk to him.
That's interesting. That's interesting.
Look, is it possible he invites more, you know, right-leaning people these days? I don't know. It could be possible, but according to him, he constantly
caters to his audience a little bit. But sorry.
I mean, it may look that way, and
I'm not out to shit on the guy. I'm not.
No. I mean, you may be right to shit on him to a degree, but he does reach out to everyone. He does reach out to the Young Turks, among other people like that. He would love to have on. They won't talk to him, which is
Cenk going on the Rubin Report. Jesus Christ.
Well, so you know, Rubin used to work for Cenk.
Of course, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So which brings me to my next point, which is that Sargon and Rubin are former Turks themselves. Not that Sargon as an audience member and Rubin as a commentator. And they fundamentally still agree with the Turks because that's the power of ideas. And that's why the Turks have such confidence. That's why Rubin and Sargon spend most of their time picking apart the opposition, whereas Cenk boastfully announces what he is for. That is the power of ideas. And yes, you do give Cenk that moral high ground when you say that people do owe even 1% of their capacity to utilitarian
You're fucking right.
purposes.
You're so fucking right.
That's the power of ethics. And I don't even remember. I had 3 points I wanted to make. But that was the main one. I don't remember. Yeah, Cenk. This is a good one. This will make you feel as good as maybe the last point made you feel bad. You want to see, but do you want to see Cenk squirm a bit? Do you want to see him with a little bit of lack of confidence? Get him talking. Watch him talk about the good side of capitalism. Watch him talk about.
That's a delight every time.
Yeah, when he says, "Hey man, look, I'm a business owner. I get it." That's the part of him that he's in conflict about.
You can see Anna cringe when that happens. You know, every time.
Yeah. So, dude, again, the power of ideas. When your altruism comes in conflict with your personal, not only your values, your passion. That's his life. And look, what made Sargon leave the left? It's that his video games, his life, his precious, his toys, his movies, his video games, were suddenly he was being called sexist. All he wanted to do was smoke weed and hang out in his mom's basement, and now he's being called a fucking sexist pig. So that's what brought him to life. With Rubin, I think it was a little bit more ideological. I think he was surprised at the way Sam Harris
debacle,
was attacked for criticizing Islam. So even then, it's like Sam Harris is sort of like the golden boy of new atheists. So it's like, hey, that's my favorite entertainer there. That, like, for me, it might be Yaron Brook. Like, hey, that's my, that's so in a sense, Sam Harris is like Rubin's video game in a way. It's like, hey, that's something I enjoy watching. That now he's being attacked for, but even so, it's in the realm of ideas that Rubin was maybe it's no different than what Sargon did. In both cases, they started to challenge the ideas of the left when their own personal value was coming under attack. So yeah,
very interesting. Well, I mean, if you're cool with it, I kind of want to shift focus a little bit and talk about this other issue real quick, and it's just about.
Can you hold that thought just so I can say, you mentioned earlier, the last point I wanted to address is when you said spreading knowledge throughout the world or spreading, the best way to do that is through capitalism, and capitalism true capitalism is 100% selfish pursuit of wealth, and capitalism is in the realm of material. So yes, the selfish pursuit of wealth. The biggest business mogul, and look at Bill Gates, for instance, a business mogul giving to charity will affect a fraction of the amount of people that a businessman affects by trying to make money. And just look at Bill Gates. He brought knowledge to corners of the globe. Same with Steve Jobs. People have iPhones in parts of Africa where they barely had books before. People have access to information and ideas and knowledge thanks to capitalism and the degree to which capitalism is free. So yeah, this smidgen of unearned guilt that you would like businessmen to have, where they feel they ought to do some, quote, good, that right there is where the battle must be waged. That is where you and I must square off, because that is only psychological. That is only your psychological reservation. If the standard is improving the lives of the world and improving the lives of everyone, it's so abundantly clear that unbridled capitalism is the answer.
I'm totally with you on that. But let me just press you on that one more time about this. So do you feel that do you feel any trepidation about, unleashing this kind of objectivist world? Do you feel any reservation about people going off the rails and doing things, maybe nukes spike in price a lot? I don't know, like something crazy happens. Is capitalism itself truly enough to guide all aspects of life in the right direction to get humanity, I don't know, in the most successful way?
Well, what I was a little confused by the nukes, but capitalism.
Bad example.
Well, capitalism itself deals with material trade, right? Even if you're teaching someone, you're giving someone a spiritual value, that's still, you're getting paid money for it. So like capitalism is a political system, it's a economic political system that has to do with material things. Now, it can only exist when it's consistent with an ethics of rational egoism. And rational egoism says not all values are material. So the values you may have with your spouse, for instance, that's a trade, and that has nothing to do with material. I mean, mostly it has nothing to do with material. That is your traders of the spirit. Same with friends, and same with, acts of charity or whatever it is you might do out of sort of just benevolence. Smiling at people in the streets, just to name a small one. So not all values. So yeah. So in a sense, for capitalism, the material system of capitalism to sustain, individual people need to largely need to embrace rational egoism, which says there's more to life than money, if that makes sense.
I see your point. Okay. In that sense, that actually does make sense. If we can get people to accept that, it makes sense to me. I'm totally willing to accept, I'm a big fan of Sam Harris. I was watching his new podcast just today before coming on his live one with Brett Weinstein. But, he's a big a big guy into spiritualism, just a completely secular spiritualism that I have no objection to whatsoever. It's perfectly rational, totally grounded in real shit that I can understand. So yeah.
Well, hold on, but let's just when you mentioned that would be, that's great if we can get people on board with that. Well, you're the one who's not on board with it. Just so we're clear, like Ruben said the same thing to me when I got lunch with him, all those months ago, that as he alluded to. Like I was trying to understand. I said, like, what is it about objectivism you're having reservations about? And obviously it's a dumb thing to ask. Someone needs to be looking for an answer. They need to be wanting it in order to be open to it. But he said something along the lines of, like, if I became objectivist, like, we would, I don't even know, I can't even quote him correctly on this. I don't want to misquote him, but I think essentially what he was saying was, how would we get essentially what you're saying now is like, well, how would we get how would we get people on board with this or something like that? And should not be the first place you jump. The first place is am I on board with this? Does this make sense for me? Is this a good philosophy for me to embrace for the finite time that I have on Earth? How to spread it is so beside the point. Remember that Ayn Rand was an artist before she was, a propagandist. Not that I would call her that, but before she was spreading opinions. She was an artist. She grew up listening to the stories of Victor Hugo. She wanted to write novels. She wanted to write movies. So the idea of how do we get these out there? Look, I mean, even now that I'm sort of out there, spreading the good word, I'm dealing with a lot of people that don't want to hear about it, or they disagree strongly with it. Am I making it? I mean, ultimately, I just need to tell myself, look, I'm doing this for me. I want the truth to be said. I don't want to live in a world where someone knows the truth and doesn't say it. And the only people who I may reach are people that are open to hearing about it. Curious people that can sense that something is wrong. You know, it's not going to be people that are already cynical, that already don't want to believe in free will. It's not going to be people that already believe that without God there can be no morality. It's for people that can sense that something is wrong and they're looking for some confidence. They're looking for some unapologetic pursuit of values. So that's to the degree that I am looking to spread the word. But ultimately, I'm doing me, you know. So I think, you know, saying something like, how can we get, if we can get people on board with this, is I think the wrong place to jump to.
I completely agree. Obviously, the foundation of this should be convincing yourself of opening yourself up to the truth, I guess. And you know, I'm not going to say I 100% agree with everything you've said so far. I think I need to do some reflection on it. But yeah, that makes sense to me. Now, you touched on something just now that is kind of a foundational principle about all of this that I think we largely agree on, but there might be just some little, I don't know if epistemological is the right word, but there might be a little bit of difference here, and it's on the concept of free will, which obviously is the foundation of for all of this shit. And so, I mean, maybe this is a complete waste of time, but I would argue that free will objectively is not real, because I believe that, you know, we are the product of the physical process of the universe. You know, once they were set in motion, they would continue upon this standardized path, outside of things like the random movement of, like, neutrinos or whatever, those subatomic particles that can be in random places at different times, electrons, whatever it is. And but our physical matter is what it is. We respond to the inputs that our sense organs observe, and there just is a pattern that's going to happen based on the conditioning that we've received up to that point. Now, the place where I think this actually isn't a problem is that I totally agree that functionally free will is indeed real, in that every person is sort of, I would say, an automaton, but they can be conditioned, they can be educated to react to those stimuli to achieve different kinds of outcomes, which, I mean, a normal person would probably just say is just education, and then you learn to do things or not to do things. So, I mean, do you want to clarify that? Do you want to?
I mean, when you first brought up free will, my instinct was to say, listen, I'm not yet ready to debate this topic, but I mean, just based on what you just said, so people, they don't have free will, but they can be conditioned by whom?
Well, it's an issue of again, maybe this is a complete waste of time. It's that free will.
It's not a waste of time at all. It's just I mean, so this is like you said, the most important. I think you said this is an important piece of the puzzle. This is what separates objectivism from the rest of the secular world currently, in the way I see it. But yeah, so, I mean, you said people can be conditioned. By whom?
I mean, not by themselves, but by, again, like, they are automatons that receive input, and then they can themselves absorb this information. I mean, it's not a choice. None of this is a choice in of itself. It is that people are just given information that will change the way they react to things. So, like, as a society, we can, you know, educate or feed people the inputs that we want to insert into them to get the more favorable outcome out of them, I think. And in a way that, on an individual level, to the individual, this totally resembles free will. It's what Sam Harris or anybody would call the illusion of free will that functionally functions basically in the exact same way. So go on. You say society can condition a person. Isn't society composed of individuals who themselves are choosing to condition that person? Well, I think the difference is at the root of this, there is no choice. At the very root of all this, there is just the physical laws of the universe that dictate the interaction of particles that result in humans doing what we perceive as meaningful actions.
Well, I guess on a certain level, you don't have free will to choose if you exist or not. You don't get to choose if reality exists. But again, if you and I are living in the jungle, you know, and it's 100,000 years ago, we have a choice to make. But what separates us from the other animals is our consciousness. Our level of consciousness. So some other animals have certain degrees of consciousness, but they all appear to be governed by instinct. Some of them, again, show early primitive signs of reason, but very primitive.
If you just want to define like the ability to reason, which is a process I'm totally willing to accept, humans obviously have. If you want to define that process as free will, I'm willing to accept that and move on, because I don't think we actually disagree very much on this point.
I don't think we should ever move on from this until it's clear. But I know we'll need to at some point. But no, like the other animals. Side note, I know it is a bad time to throw in a side note, but it occurred to me today that other animals show primitive signs of reason. And we spend in our intellectual world today, we spend all our time overstating animals' ability to reason and diminishing our own, underplaying our own ability to reason. Oh, we're automatons. We're conditioned. We're just robots driven by the force of history and our ancestors and the universe. Listen, we have yes, everything influences our choices, but what we have is consciousness. You never hear about consciousness in the intellectual world. It's always what caused the person, and psychology being the young.
What I want to ask about is that I believe consciousness is not what we perceive it to be. It's not like, in religious terms, people would define it as like a soul that is, above the brain, that I guess somehow gives you the ability to make choices in some way. But I don't accept that that's real. And so I don't know what the mechanism actually is that lets you make these choices. I'm very much with Sam Harris on that this all being an illusion. Yeah.
Look, so Sam Harris and all the new atheists and all the skeptics and all the non-religious thinkers today either say there is no consciousness, or they say there's like the illusion of consciousness. But so Ayn Rand is the only one who says there is a secular case for consciousness and free will. And again, like the first time I read Atlas Shrugged, I sort of ended up flipping through a lot of John Galt's speech. But now that I'm rereading it, I'm going to read that part very carefully, because I understand it gives this topic the attention that it deserves. So again, I'm not currently qualified to really go deep into this, but I think we're both qualified to give our opinion. And I can say, the secularists today, outside of objectivism, they treat free will like it's only a matter of religion, like it's only a religious thing, like they sort of threw away free will and consciousness with religion. And I think Ayn Rand's take on this is worth investigating. There is someone I've been watching on YouTube, a very small channel, but very, very good. A guy named Charles Tew, that's Tew, and I'm going to have a sit down with him once I'm done binging on his channel. I'm watching all of his back catalog, but he is just advanced level objectivist, and he pointed out on a video I recently watched that the most interesting conflicts are between the good and the other good people. In the Civil War, the interesting conflict was between people who wanted to who wanted to preserve the Union because that's the last hope on earth, and people that said, hey, let's get rid of slavery, even if that means throwing the whole country into the garbage with it. So it wasn't between Lincoln and the South. Jefferson. It was between Lincoln and the abolitionist purists that said abolish slavery at all costs, even if it means that the whole country goes to burns to the ground. In The Fountainhead, it's between Howard Rourke and Gail Wynand. That's where the interesting conflict is. They're both people that pursue values, but they have very different ideas of what that looks like. The important conflict is not between Rourke and Toohey, for instance. So it's also interesting between this conversation with you is so much more interesting to me than having it with someone that's never heard of objectivism. This is so much more interesting, is that we both more or less agree with Rand, but those differences between us are what's so much more interesting to get down to, and in my case to state the importance of that difference. So I bring up Charles Tew because I think he would be an excellent person to look into as far as understanding free will. If you don't want to reread, Atlas Shrugged, or if you don't want to read more objectivist literature, or if you don't want to listen to other lectures on it, I would definitely either contact him to have a similar conversation with him, to see if he can persuade you, or look at some of his videos. I think he's had at least one or two on free will. So he's someone I would definitely entrust to explain this better than myself. But But yeah, I haven't heard the case against consciousness. I mean, to me, consciousness is an axiom. It's just consciousness is self-evident. I'm conscious. You're conscious. I don't know. I don't know how you can use, abstractions to negate it, to explain it away. It's so clear that I am conscious and that you are as well.
Yeah, on that point, consciousness, I would agree, is a self-evident phenomenon. The thing that I would question is just if we have any control, or if that is, in fact, an illusion, as we were saying. So, but I'm willing to concede that consciousness is in fact real. It's just a matter of what that tells us beyond that, as to, what are the extents of what does my consciousness allow me to do? And I mean, my argument would be literally nothing except observe. But again, that's a question we can table for now, and not say that we've settled it, of course.
I mean, it's important to point out that the skeptics, they have their mind made up on this, and guys like Sam Harris in particular won't talk to objectivists. He's similar to Dennis Prager in that regard. I don't know his motivation. I don't know if it's ethics with him the way that it is with Prager. Maybe with him it's metaphysics and specifically epistemology. The fact that Ayn Rand is saying there is free will and Sam Harris is married to the idea that there's not free will. But look, in both cases, you've got big figures, big thinkers in our culture who say they're committed to debate, and when it comes to Ayn Rand, they're very dismissive. And I can't read into their hearts and tell you why they're doing it, but I can only say this is an important conversation to have. And in both cases, you have Prager and Harris that will not talk to an objectivist about it. But the conversation will commence, whether they show up or not. We will have that conversation with them. If they don't show up to the debate, the debate will commence. So, look, I mean, the issue of free will is an important one because it does make all the difference in the world. And
agreed.
And but again, ultimately, for objectivism to be embraced, it needs to come from a deeply personal place. It needs to come that's why the Fountainhead is where it kind of all begins for so many people, especially including me, is because it begins with this statement of values do exist. They can be pursued. You ought to pursue them with no reservations, with no apologies. And that just speaks to me on such a deeply personal level. What got me I never used to call myself objectivist. I just would say, I agree with it. I have some questions. And then when I was 27, and at this point I was about 3 years sober. And I'd always struggled because, I go to 12-step meetings, and I've always kind of struggled with where that literature conflicts with objectivism, or the things people will say at meetings conflicts with objectivism. Right. And there was kind of a certain degree of guilt. But when I read The Objectivist Ethics, which is the first chapter of The Virtue of Selfishness, it's an incredibly well-written essay. In fact, maybe you can put that on your reading list. It's an essay. It's not incredibly long. Sure. And it just clearly demonstrates to me, and I was just ready to understand it at the time, about how it is all or nothing when it comes to ethics and ideas. A tiny bit of a contradiction, it makes it all fall apart. It is like building a bridge where one of the beams is compromised. You cannot trust the bridge at that point. And when it came to ethics, I said, okay, I know that, in the world of recovery and in the 12 steps, there is an emphasis on moral inventory. What if I approach it with the idea that the moral code is objectivist, rather than the altruist ethics that we all presume?
You have to make that change at that fundamental level before anything could be built off of it, of course. Yeah.
And to me, it was obviously a personal thing. I said, I want to stay sober, but I want to feel good as well. I don't want to be neurotic. I don't want to be always living in fear of relapse. I don't want to, be always feeling like there's this conflict between what Ayn Rand tells me and what, Bill Wilson, the founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, what he tells me. I need to reconcile the two. And ultimately, the only way to do that is for AA to yield to objectivism whenever the two come into conflict. So when it comes to taking moral inventory, the morality is egoist. It's built on reason, and it works. And and I've taken that taken that leap, and maybe someone hears my story and goes, oh wow, I've always had reservations about getting sober or whatever because I thought it had religious connotations. Well, now they're hearing someone who's yelling at you that you're not objectivist enough, and I'm 6 years sober. So I'm saying nothing's off limits. There is nowhere outside the purview of objectivism in the sense that reason goes everywhere. There are no compromises. There are no contradictions. And the world can be yours the only thing holding you back are your own personal trepidations, your own inner contradictions where you feel a tiny bit of unearned guilt for being selfish, essentially. So yeah, for me, what made me start to call myself objectivist was, when it had to do with my sobriety, when it came to, what those ethics meant to me. So it wasn't about capitalism. It wasn't about even, atheism. It really just was about, wait a minute. So what you're saying is, in the deepest way possible, ethics benefit me. Now I get it. Now I get possibly what drives people to drink and do drugs in the first place. This inner contradiction of what I want is wrong because I want it, and what I don't want is moral, or what's moral is what I don't want, and that there's this kind of ongoing conflict. And that life is now this curse where the universe has put me in this position where I need to immediately where, like you said, I'm born in debt to a degree, where what I want can be good, but only to a degree. And what I don't want is, more often than not, is the moral thing to do, really just because I don't want to do it. That is what needs to be challenged. That is what needs to be eliminated. And it's important to recognize that the reason that contradiction is there comes from philosophy departments. It comes from thinkers, religious or secular, that uphold the ethics of altruism. And some of the most daring thinkers on earth, they still can't bring themselves to question the ethics of altruism. They still say
those Judeo-Christian roots are a bitch, dude.
Absolutely, but you know what? But you can be the one to challenge them. Sam Harris can be the one to challenge them because it goes so deep. And anytime you hear an atheist say, "Hey, I'm an atheist, but I'm a good person anyway," you want to say, "Hey, what do you mean anyway?" So you're just assuming that religious morality is the right thing, and that we all need to base our. I was just watching. I was watching Jacqueline Glenn today. And she was talking about how she loves Christmas because it's about family. And she was saying, honestly, Christmas has been corrupted by commercialism. But to me, it's about family, she said. And, the family element is wonderful. Obviously, that falls within everyone's hierarchy of values, right. Assuming they love their family, if their family are good people. But the commercialization of Christmas is what made Christmas a holiday in America to begin with. I mean, it was always there was always a tradition of, going to mass at midnight and eating a wafer. But what made, Santa Claus with the big goofy suit, what made, the Christmas tree with all the jingle bells on it, with all the fucking presents, that's commercialism. That's capitalism. That's the abundance. Just like Thanksgiving. That's a celebration of the abundance in the new world. So, yeah, American commercialism and consumerism is what made Christmas what we know it. The prosperity that allowed us to sit around with our families and get fat. That's capitalism. But what brought about capitalism, of course, is the Enlightenment and early signs of egoism. Even if the founding fathers of America and the Enlightenment thinkers before them, they didn't have an Ayn Rand among them to challenge altruism the way it needed to be challenged. Even then, just the general spirit of egoism that the Enlightenment brought about, this I can attitude of I don't need to take orders from religion, and I can live the life that I want. That alone gave us the prosperity that brought us Christmas, and I don't even remember how this all came about.
I was good. No, you're right about that. And I was just reading a bit of Common Sense, Thomas's Paine document that was kind of the document that spurred this whole thing, or was the condensation of the arguments for separation and all this good shit. And I couldn't be more thrilled with it. It's such a great little. Sargon, of course, was the one who turned me on to that when he was doing a review of it on his channel, and. Yeah, what a great little read. Now, there's one more question that I wanted to ask you about, based on all the stuff that we've just been talking about, and it's interesting to me that you talk about all this the whole spirit of objectivism puts you in such a frame where you're pursuing your personal values. It's of course in a non non-negative way. Obviously, it's all about doing what you want and sort of rejecting maybe expectations that are put on you and pursuing your path in life, and then generating wealth and all the good things that come from that. And so what I was just wondering is, does this attitude feed into your content? Since I mean, your content is so, I guess you could say, controversial. I mean, to me, it's, scroll through 4chan, you see 1,000 things worse than that. But, like to the wide audience that your content reaches, it's got to come off like, wow, this guy really just doesn't give a fuck. He's just like doing whatever he wants out here. And so I'm just wondering if, I don't know your full history, writing this kind of music. So did this, coming to these conclusions, did this feed into your sort of like the armor that you feel like you don't give a fuck about what people are going to say about it? Because I've seen some of the comments; they're not all pretty. They're not all complimentary on the content. So does this attitude give you, sort of embolden you to just not give a fuck and do whatever you want when you're out making that stuff?
It certainly helps. Mm-hmm. When I think a big part of my sense of humor kind of is what Ayn Rand calls sense of life. So there are your conscious convictions, and you and I have slightly different convictions, but then there's sense of life, which is sort of your implicit appraisal of the universe. Maybe you can call it personality, sort of somewhat interchangeable with sense of life, kind of how you see the world. And you may appraise the world to be a wonderful place. You may appraise it to be a very negative place. And the correct way is to appraise the universe as a wonderful place, because think all the potential it has for a wonderful life.
Agreed.
If we see it that way. But so your sense of life is not always in sync with your conscious convictions. So someone like Victor Hugo wrote beautiful literature about individuals pursuing individual values, whereas his conscious convictions, he was a socialist. So he essentially believed in the opposite of what his art was conveying. So there's just one example of, so in Ayn Rand's case, her sense of life, as she described it, was benevolent, was that beauty exists, and the world can be a beautiful place, and let's make it so. And then her art, of course, demonstrated that. You had wonderful characters. The heroes were just unconflicted, in an unconflicted way, pursuing values. Mm-hmm. And some of the characters were conflicted, of course, but that's not the point. That she created characters that stood firmly, and that's what lured me in. People, Howard Rourke, confidently doing what he wanted. So, I think my sense of life sort of is what ultimately brought me to creating the type of stuff I'm doing. That sense of humor, but then. Yeah, kind of like this empowerment that something like objectivism brings. I think a very superficial understanding of objectivism might kind of turn it into a religion and say, don't joke about something unless it's, approved content, unless it only makes fun of the bad, or jokes about a certain type of thing, don't joke about race. Race is collectivism. But, I think that's very superficial. I think an integrated understanding of objectivism says, hey, this is funny to me. I am expressing my lighthearted view of life, my kind of quote carefree, even though it's not. It's things matter to me deeply. But this sort of I own the world kind of attitude. And yeah, even like it can I guess that's the way I would answer that if I understood the question. But yeah, I would say absolutely. The more I've come to understand objectivism and to agree with it, the more I would say my work has flourished. The more I've enjoyed my work more, and the more confident I've gotten about it.
Sounds good, man. That's that I'm glad to hear that. Obviously it makes sense. It's all logically consistent that that's the case. And I myself feel this might be some of the conflict that you've been noticing in me. I myself feel a little bit. I mean, I'm a content creator online myself, obviously, and sometimes I feel trepidation about putting out certain messages, even if I wholeheartedly believe them, because of this sort of fear of the backlash that might happen. In the environment we live in, backlash can be inevitable in when you're dealing with certain subjects. And I find it inspiring to hear that such a strong strong embrace of these ideas can give you that kind of confidence and just let you unload and create the kind of stuff that's, the people eat it up. I've been watching your content for a long time and hope to continue to do so for quite a bit longer.
Oh, I appreciate that, and I'm very happy to hear that. That's really cool. Mm-hmm. And the when I started getting into the world of commentary, and like this is, honestly, it's as long as I've been, posting music online, I've been wanting to also, post commentary. Luckily, I wasn't doing so in 2006, 2007, because the opinions I had were a very immature understanding of objectivism. So I'm glad I wasn't giving my opinion yet. And I think part of what kept me back was that knowledge that, hey, I'm not ready to do this yet. Even now, I'm always somewhat reserved. Like, I hope I'm not stepping outside my area of knowledge. Although I think at this point, to be arrogant for a second, I think the message I'm spreading is so valuable that even if there is an error here and there, mm-hmm. It ultimately is a net good in a major way. But sure. But this desire to kind of get out and give my opinion, it's always been there. And when I finally started to do it, when I finally started to kind of, whether it's giving straight interviews or just, post commentary videos, it was nerve-wracking. Even me, after, 10 years of people calling me racist and calling me a hack and just talking shit every day, this is a horse of a new color. This is a whole different game, a whole new level of hostility that I was expecting to come my way. And interestingly enough, I don't know, it's like, it's not, there's no, once you just put it out there, it's out there and life goes on. I don't know. There's not giving a shit, giving a fuck is never the answer when it comes to other people's opinions, because, if somebody more integrated than myself, if somebody who is more objective than I thinks that I'm doing something terrible, they're welcome to explain to me why that is. But, if somebody who's less value driven than me, who's more cynical, who just kind of dismisses the whole topic because it's too consistent, because it's too, value oriented, or it's just, it's too, like I said, too consistent. It's too systematic. And if they just want to dismiss what I'm saying with just kind of one sarcastic, cynical remark, fuck them, dude. Like, it's not never give the world to them. And, to compare myself to Rand one last time, I know when she was writing The Fountainhead, she had moments where she was just so turned off by the cultural trends she was seeing around her. And she would tell her husband, like, I can't do this. I don't think this world is worth saving anymore. And he would say, never surrender the world to the people you despise. I think I'm quoting him, verbatim or not, but that's generally what he said. Never, surrender this world to the people that you despise. And that's true. If people want to be negative, if they want to, just shit on whatever it is that I'm saying, that's their loss. So yeah, that comes to mind when you say that you hesitate to give your opinion online. Think about whose opinion is it you're worried about, and do you think that, two people having a negative opinion matters more than your one opinion? You got to just really think about who is this person out there that you're worried about condemning you. And I know this, nobody said this is easy. And even as I'm telling you, sure. This is an ongoing, struggle in a way, although it's getting easier and easier by the day, because the more you overcome this fear, the more you see that there's nothing to be afraid of.
Wise words for Mr. Rucka Rucka Ali.
Yeah.
All right. Well, dude, I mean, thanks for taking the time. I mean, we ran through most of my questions. We could go on all day. We could talk about objective morality, like objective standards and shit. But, I think I've taken up enough of your time, and it's been an absolute pleasure, dude.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun, and let's do it again. I really enjoy talking about these things, and I find it more interesting when we mostly agree.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's pretty cool.
Sounds good to me, dude. All right, well, thanks for being here, and take it easy, dude.
All right, later.
Peace.